This is Rickie Lee Jones.
And Russ Titelman.
Jazz is not what you think.
Exactly.
First, I'd like to say welcome, Rickie Lee Jones. I'm a huge fan.
Thank you.
You're inspiration for me. It's one of the reasons I got into this business. It seems like forever, but your debut album, I think you were around 25 years old when that came out.
24.
24, and I was inspired. I was inspired because I talked to Kenny Loggins about this the other day. There was kind of a zeitgeist going on back then where you had these recording and performing artists that seem to gravitate to some of these wonderful jazz musicians that were performing on those records. And it created a certain sound and a genre that has been imitated but yet to be replicated. It was a great time for music, and your debut album was certainly on the top of my list. Come full circle with your latest album, it's almost Back to the Future. I totally agree with Russ when he talks about there's a track on the debut album. Is it Country? I think it's called Country, and when I first listened to it, I wasn't thinking of you as a jazz singer, but when I heard that song, it was undeniable that you were a jazz singer, and the journey that you've taken since then, and I've followed every record, has been a tortuous one where you've gone in so many different places, but now you're back to that song and the beauty of the song. And I was going to save this for the end, but I want to pose this question to you because I feel it in your music now, and that is now, so many years later, you create this wonderful new album. And you wrote a note that talked about giving. And you talk about the lessons we've all learned in life about the importance of giving. Can you comment on that and how that has helped your musical journey?
I can. First, I'm going to address the song and Russ's impression of that song. So that song is called Company.
Company.
And so he said to me in this last year when we reunited our friendship and rekindled our friendship, he said, when I first heard Company, it reminded me of Roberta Flack. And that was one of the most insightful things anybody has ever said to me, because I've always considered myself a fine singer, and my first love is jazz. But I can sing anything because I'm a singer, right? But there's a kind of singing that I don't do, and for me, it's the very trained, oversung thing that a lot of people love, but I just don't dig it. And so when I hear Roberta Flack, I hear a woman who's a singer and she probably, definitely had a teacher, but the voice that I hear is not trained. It's right from the source of her intention. And sometimes when people have too many teachers, it impedes that natural thing. So I had an untrained voice, but I understood what he was saying when he said, "You are like Roberta Flack." Because when Roberta Flack sang, the first time ever I saw your face, for months, it was all anybody wanted to listen to. It was so simple and unaffected, not even vibrato, just pow. So I went, okay, Russ got me on a level that I never heard anybody get me. And that was why I knew I was in the hands of somebody not only so respectful, but insightful. And it's hard to explain what a producer does, but they take you by that invisible world of intention to the place you couldn't go on your own. Because as you said, I've done a lot of different things on my own and with a few producers, but this kind of love takes you to some other place entirely. So I just wanted to, if Russ doesn't make it here, it's okay,
That's
because he, when he's in the studio, he definitely knows what he's doing. So Company was the only song of that ilk. When I was writing with my co-writer there, Alfred Johnson,
mhm.
I was thinking I might have a career as a songwriter. I didn't know that I'd get a big break and get to be a singer. So I wrote that with Frank Sinatra in mind. And when I met Lenny and Russ, and at the time, sorry, I don't like sitting here. And at the time, the president of Warner Brothers, Mo Austin, they actually flew to the desert and took that song to Little Unknown Thing, took that song to Frank Sinatra. And they came back and said, he can't sing that stuff anymore because that's a really hard song to sing. So, um, so there is something full circle. It's inexplicable though, isn't it? I don't know how or why, but I can feel that at last I've landed in I've landed again. I have, and I'm not going to say more than that because words don't explain it, but you can feel it, right? So it's a great
Oh
piece,
yeah.
and I'm here again.
So the one thing that was obvious to me as a listener and a fan is this concept of a conversation. I think one of the things that makes this album and many of your albums special is that I feel like you're singing to me, you're talking to me, and also having a conversation with the other musicians. And I noticed in some of your notes you echoed that sentiment. And for example, the thing that completely mesmerized me when I just started listening to your record was Mike Manieri's Vibes.
Yeah.
And I've known Mike forever, and I know you do too. And I think he's absolutely wonderful. I actually just talked to him about a year ago. I need to call him. And you hear that vibe, and it's a conversation between you and Mike. He's not speaking in words, you are, but you're clearly understanding each other. Tell me how that works.
Well, he's anticipating, a syncopated thing that's coming, and he plays it before it gets there. This is the closest. This is the closest I think a singer and a player have ever been. Everything I'm going to do is set up by Mike, and then he also responds to it after the fact. And he's got his own joyful character that he brought, as if he went, this is a little fun sensual thing she's going to do. I'm going to introduce her now. Here she comes. And it's kind of reminded me of the Jetsons. Forgive me for that, but it reminded me of this happy time when we were kids, and or a soap commercial or something full of bright, what are those called? Kid colors, primary colors. So
Yeah.
it that's just my goofy mind, but it's an extraordinary track. Yes.
Yeah, and he's absolutely wonderful. But all the musicians on the record. I mean, there's this conversation. One of the things that I've been working on in Jazziz is this upcoming issue about duos and how the interaction between recording and performing artists, and that interaction becomes so obvious on this record. And the thing that I thought was really wonderful, and you bring us back a couple of decades, maybe 50 years, where they're shorter songs, they're incredibly meaningful, and I actually I don't think I've come up with this word, but I was trying to think of a word to describe this album, and it's your audio biography. It's a musical version of things that obviously you feel very passionate about, that you've learned through life, and you express them in song.
Okay.
Yeah, so I like to leave it open ended because one of the things that the lessons that we all learn in life, we go back and listen to those songs. I mean, most of us who have been studying music, listening to music, have heard most of, if not all of these songs.
Yes.
But you bring new meaning to them as you breathe your life into them, and you listen to them differently, and you listen to the words differently, even though they were written by the same writer.
That's right.
There's something about the way you articulate it. How can you explain that?
You know, it's better for people who explain things to explain it. But I know that whenever I sing any song, it's almost like it's a room. I see it intact, all that are living in it, who built it, where it came from. So when I step into it, I'm part of a story that's already existed. I don't think most singers do this, but this is my relationship with anything that I sing. It just starts to build a room. So so every song I sing, I have an imaginary world, a long history that is either an imaginary history or a real one with the song, like Sunny Side of the Street or something. So that's how I sing a song, and inexplicably, that's what you hear. That's what. Also, it's just an unimpeded emotional relationship. I know I'm talking to an audience, but I'm also talking to the imaginary person that the writer puts there in front of me. Just in time, I found you just in time. Well, that imaginary person is there for anybody who sings the song, but not everybody envisions him or her and makes him as real as possible. In my case, you know, I'm 68 years old, so you better believe it's just in time, and it's kind of funny, and all the things that I want to bring at my age to that song. So it's a complex, it's a complex thing, and I'm glad that it's still working. But I guess that's the way I sing. I did want to comment on the 2 minute songs, on the 3 minute songs. So when you go hear jazz, everybody takes a solo. Every single verse, somebody else takes a solo. And that was really interesting in 1940, when you had extraordinary, not that there aren't great musicians now, but it was a new idea. And it is not a new idea today. I think when a soloist plays, he has to be as compelling as the singer. He has to be telling a story as compelling as what just caught your attention. Otherwise, there's just no reason to put a solo in there. So these are short songs, and I made the choice not to sing them again. I just went, here is what the writer had to say. We're going to say it. We're out. Once or twice, we came back around to the refrain. Now you're here now, and Mike. We had to let Mike play, play the
Hmm.
whole song. Mike. But I just didn't want to do that thing. I did an interesting thing, I think, with Here's That Rainy Day, where I brought the thing back in and then sang the end of the phrase, then let the player play and then sang the end of the phrase and brought it back in. So when I when we left space for it, but then as it turned out, so we recorded, I don't like to tell too many secrets, but we recorded the tracks and left space in two of them for possible solos. But when we got there to put solos in, it was so false. I mean, and they're great players, but they had nothing to do with the energy of the room that day. And there was no way that we didn't, it's not that we, grew attached to it as it was. You could tell this solo has nothing to do with
Hmm.
what happens is people come in and they go, I love it when I play this thing. I'm going to play this thing. And he goes, blah, 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 blah. And he goes, but that has nothing to do with this. So it's very hard to find. So even if you do find somebody who listens and goes, "Oh, this solo should only be 4 notes," ba 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 boo, da ba ba boo, da, and that's all they played, it didn't work because it wasn't live. So we end up with long spaces that have no solo, and it's wonderful.
The space.
It's just the keeps this sensual vibe between everybody. So yeah, the 2 minute thing was purposeful, 3 minutes, and so consequently the overall length of the record is a little shorter, but it's a record of 10 songs, as it should be.
And you're singing. I wanted to comment on something that I've noticed over the years with singers that we loved in their early years, that it's not like we fall out of love with their singing, but I guess to sugarcoat it, some singers we wish they stopped singing, and because we want to remember them when they were great singers. You, on the other hand, your singing voice has evolved. When I first listened to your voice, you had a lack for a better, like almost a childish, this innocent, yet we knew that you were this tough kid, but you had this innocent voice, which was quite a paradox. Now, you're a little bit older, your voice is older, but you still maintain that childishness in some way. And it comes through in the music, and it actually sounds better.
Yeah, thank you.
And I think Russ picked up on that immediately and put that out front.
Well, to be honest, I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I've been working live for many years, and I noticed about 3 years ago that the top of the range was a struggle. And then the mid high was dissolving. And I was going, oh, how will I ever sing jazz again? But what happened was I began to practice, which I never had to do before. So I began to, work that muscle and identify where it struggles and find another way around it. And in this jazz record, the minute that I started singing, it seemed that I brought all knowledge to bear to make it easy. And it sounds really easy, but I was working
I bet.
hard to make it easy and hit all the notes and not slide up to the notes and make it just as strong as it could be. So I did it, but yeah,
You did it. But you did something that I think all great recording and performing artists do, and that is you make it look easy. Yet if you really understand music, you understand how hard it is to get there.
Yes.
And you did it. So
Thanks.
when you, going back again to your debut album, you out of the box became really kind of a music icon. That had to have some serious consequence for you at 24 years old. You're thrusted onto the scene. You're at this record company that was at what I believe was their heyday.
Yeah.
When Mo and Lenny and Russ were doing their thing back at Warner Brothers, it never was better than that, and it's never been better since. What was it like to be this young woman on this? In other words, I guess what I'm getting at, did you ever feel as a young artist that these are just a bunch of record company guys trying to tell me what to do? Or did you have faith back then because of the way the business was so much different then than it is now?
I hadn't really assessed anything business. I thought the Rolling Stone was kind of snobby, but that was as far into that water that I put my toe. So when I was signed by a record company that with people whose names I knew because of their association with my idols like Randy Newman, so I knew Lenny and Russ. When they embraced me, I found a family. So I never saw them as record company guys. I saw them as an extension of my own family. I would go to Warner Brothers every day and walk around and say hello to everybody. I'm not kidding. I had nothing else to do. And that's probably the best thing an artist could do. But and I'd go sit in Lenny's office or Mo's office, just sit to wait to talk to them, because I guess I didn't have much of a, I'd left my mother up in Washington, so they became my family. And I never, until the end, which happened after Bob Regier died, and that was so emotional for me, and overwhelming, that I think, and Lenny and Russ had moved on. They didn't want to produce my next record for whatever reason. Then I knew I was done there. But until that happened, they were my family, and never ever did they try to interfere with my vision. All they wanted to do was bring whatever it was I wanted to do to the vinyl.
That was great. Do you, and don't take this the wrong way, but do you think that you're an easier person today than you were back
Yeah. In every
in the
way.
early days?
Yeah. There's two people. There's the little girl I was before I was signed, and then the woman I became right after I was signed. Which, the girl I was before really wanted to succeed, but I must have been charming enough to bring people to me to help me do that. After I was signed, and vulnerable and innocent, but after I was signed, and so much power, and, to be clear, drugs, and the loss of my love affair, and then eventually the loss of my Warner's family, made me a very, not just cranky, but what's the word? Self-important. Just, I had I think, maybe not all, but all the things you hope a person doesn't become when they have wealth and fame, I became. Remember when Kanye West jumped on the stage and said that girl couldn't have her Grammy? I was just that far from that guy.
Wow.
I was so important that everybody wants to know what I have to say. I know what's best for everybody. Well, I was, I didn't jump on any stages, but when he did that, I went, oh my God, I know that guy. Oh, help him, help the bombardier. So that was really a hard, and I wish that, what do I wish? I'm not sure how I could have, I'm kind of kind now, and I recognize the other in the room. That took a long time to get there, because I was so full of my own sorrow and pain, and then importance, but in the interior thing, just a lot of, old childhood stuff in there. So that took a long time before. It's just as simple as saying, I'm done with that. No big thing has to happen. I'm done with that. Who are you? How can I help you? It takes years to get there, but once you do that, you can really have a lot of power, and that power goes into your work, because you're always aiming at the other. When I'm singing, I guess all those things come into play. I'm thinking only of myself, because I'm thinking of the sound of my voice, and now I have to control every little thing. I'm thinking of the text of the song. I'm thinking of the drummer, how sweet he is. Listen to what he's trying to do. I'm thinking of everything until it's just a blank canvas. And it's a mystical thing. But if you don't have, for whatever reason, if kindness isn't part of your vocabulary, and compassion, well, we just won't hear it in what you sing, and that's okay. But that's what you're hearing. You're hearing a lot of, I think, a lot of happiness, a lot of very personal. I feel something, besides being right up on the mic. I feel something very, very personal in how I'm delivering. Hi, Russ. How I'm delivering
Hi,
what I.
Rickie. You
Russell's
have
like,
Hey,
no
Russ.
idea
Thanks
what I
for.
had to go through to get on.
I'm so
Well,
glad.
you're here.
Yeah.
And there's the green
Well,
wall.
The green wall and
there's the green
painting.
wall. We saw Rickie's green wall. We saw your green wall. I feel
Yeah.
left out. I do not have a green wall.
We can
Well,
consult later to tell you what the color is.
Well, Rickie and I are having a wonderful conversation, and we've talked about you, but we haven't had a chance yet to talk to you. And one of the things I was going to ask early on, you guys are truly friends. I mean, it's not
Oh, yeah.
just you're not just music collaborators. And how does that work? I mean, they always say, don't go into business with friends, or whatever the vernacular is. But you seem to do it well.
Well, I think it speaks for itself. We've known each other for so long, and we stayed friends even when there were long periods of not communicating. But when we do, it's like family. It's like getting back together with your closest person. So and the business, doing business with someone, it's funny. I used what's his name, Jonathan, the guy who does all the Sondheim orchestrations. Jonathan, not Taplin.
I'll look it up.
Thanks,
Soundheimer.
Rickie.
But anyway, go forward. And then
So he told, when I went over to discuss I got him to do a couple of arrangements for me. And when I went over there to his place, he had all this memorabilia and cards, and he showed me a Christmas card from Sondheim to him that said, "Nice doing business with you."
Jonathan Lawson?
Huh?
Jonathan Larson?
No,
No, not really.
arranger.
That later who he was. So I think with Russ and I, we made these two records that, as you said, were beautiful records and important at the time.
Yeah.
Pirates was almost like going into an archaeological dig of my emotions and coming back alive again.
Yeah.
So I think when you've done something like that together, there's a bond, there's a familiarity that never goes away. And especially if Russ gets to see that 20 years later, I've found my way out of the dark hole. And, he's known lots of musicians. I'm certainly not the worst of anybody he's known.
Come on. But also in the 90s, we did a live record together. And that's when it was just the two of us doing it. And Rickie called me and asked me to help her do it. And she had recorded all this stuff, and she sent it to me. And I listened to it, and I said, okay, we don't have a We Belong Together. We don't have a Chucky's in Love, and we don't have something else. I don't remember what it was. I said, so you have to do another show or two, and we'll get those things. And that's exactly what we did. You went to San Francisco somewhere, and did two shows, and we got those pieces, and then we mixed it. It was like really an easy thing. I think there was one thing you did overdubs on, not much, and that was a great experience for us. It went very, it was simple, and because of the nature of, it was just you on either guitar or piano.
Yeah.
Except for the one thing with Rob, the bass thing. But I think that was kind of a little turning point or something that allowed us to work together, and there was not a lot of charge on the thing.
Yeah.
And
Rickie and I were talking about you obviously, Russ, you produced some amazing pop records. I mean, two of my favorite James Taylor albums you produced, October Road and Gorilla. And yet you have this understanding of jazz and jazz musicians, and Rickie and I were talking about this, that back then, especially in the early days, the first two records, there was this thing going on with these great jazz musicians from producers who understood what those musicians could bring to the table.
Yeah.
And obviously you did it on this record, although the conversation is so much more intimate on this record. Where did you, I mean, everyone knows you as a producer and a songwriter, and I heard you're a pretty good guitar player too.
Yeah.
And where did that come from?
For me, well, my parents, it came from my parents who had the best taste in music. They weren't musicians. My mother could read and play piano. We had the Fireside Folk Songbook. All the commies had it.
Mm-hmm.
And and it had folk songs on it and political songs. Freiheit, this German anti-war World War I song, and Los Cuatro Generales, which was Spanish Civil War song. And the arrangements were nice, so she could read and play, and we'd stand around and sing those songs. But their record collection was Louis Armstrong, Ella Fitzgerald, Harry James, Dinah Shore, the Almanac Singers, Pete Seeger and Woody Guthrie, the Weavers, the Red Army Choir. My father's favorite piece of music was Beethoven's Fifth Piano Concerto, or Arthur Rubinstein, and so that music was going in the house all the time. And my mother loved Louis Jordan, so
Yeah.
Come on. So there was
that was in your blood.
In my blood and Leadbelly. The most important thing to me was Leadbelly. When I was 2 and 3 years old, I just sit and listen to that thing over and over and over again.
I just want to say this, that it's so important to note that our generation and a little bit after us has such a diverse education, because our parents brought jazz, but we're hearing Black music and white music on the radio together, which hadn't really happened before. We're hearing, what was soul and stuff. Russ has this folk commie background, which I didn't have. But so when we come, we have such an education.
Yeah.
And to market the record, it's got to go in jazz or rock or pop. But that's not the impetus that we come from. We just come from a love of music.
Yeah, that's it. And the radio, I'm 10 years older than you. But so when I was a kid, my older sister, all of her friends were listening to all the doo-wop records.
Yeah.
So that was it for me, and then pop radio had anything that was good, that was selling, was on the radio. There was an R&B station, which I listened to as a kid all the time, KGFJ in LA. But Sam Cooke, any hit doo-wop record or Whispering Bells, the Del Vikings and all these people, and that was, and then Dion comes and all the rest of the other stuff. So that was what we grew up with, and the stuff that we loved, which included all that. Like when you think about those records that were made back then, all the musicians on those records were the great jazz players. So you wonder why the thing swings so hard. Why do fools fall in love? And these records just swung like crazy.
Yeah.
The Rickie and I were talking about this earlier, and that is, there are a lot of singers that are technically wonderful, but they don't breathe life into the song. They don't make the song their own. They're quite competent in singing them, and the musicians are stellar, but you just don't get that same feeling that you get like you do on this record, where you just and the thing that I think, for me as a listener, that I love about a record is, you mentioned earlier that these are shorter songs and the total length of the album is short. Yeah. It leaves you wanting more. And I think that's what makes sometimes a really great record. When you get done with the album and you're like, I could listen to that again.
Yeah. I agree. The other thing is that it was a choice, I think, that we made, that we didn't take a lot of repeats. A lot of people take repeats, like All the Way, boom, that's it, and then it's over, and it's all in the game, and all of these things so it's all stripped down. and it allowed Rickie to do the thing that she does the best, which is to bring this other thing to, you know, I think that you as an artist, I think what we managed to do, I think, was to choose songs that allowed you to do the thing that you do on your own material. So that, you know, the vocal performance on Company, which comes from another galaxy.
So to tell a story, maybe.
Yeah, it's telling a story, but you get to that place in you that, I mean, I think I don't know anyone else who does that.
Yeah. You know, I have a funny Rickie story. Rickie, I hope you like this story. So I'm going to pull it up on screen. You may remember this, but back in the early 90s, how do I pull this up? Add to stream. We featured you, Rickie, on the cover of Jazziz magazine.
Mention this All in the Game song when you're done. Yes, please go. I'm ready.
And
when was this?
And
when
you
was
did, this was, I want to say, maybe this was for the Pop record.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
92, 93.
Wow.
Yes.
What a fabulous
and so this is photographer Jeff Sedlick, and I know you've been shot by the greatest photographers in the world, Andy Leibovitz for Rolling Stone. Jeff, as you may know his work, he did that famous shot of Miles Davis with his finger to his mouth.
Yeah.
And Jeff's just a wonderful LA photographer who he's been working with us for years. And he told me a story about you at this photo session, which really epitomized you and you as an artist, full circle, beyond music. And that is, Jeff is a very studied, very serious photographer. Usually before he goes into a photo shoot, he's drawn sketches, he's figured out lighting, he's got assistants, wardrobe, makeup, whatever. Brings the whole entourage. And you came to the photo session, and he starts telling you, okay, so I want you to do this and this and this. And you just looked at him, and you said, okay, let me tell you how this is going to work. You do your thing, I'm going to do my thing. If you catch my thing during your thing, it'll be great. If not, I don't know what to tell you. And you did your thing, and not only was this an absolutely stunning cover photo, but the inside photography was also brilliant. Rickie Lee doing her thing.
Yeah.
And so I get it.
And
I'll leave.
I just made this. That's exactly how we made this record. You know, I'm a
So
good.
I mention All in the Game real fast, if I could.
Okay. Oh.
That's a good one to use to illustrate this point. So, All in the Game is almost a dead song because it was done so definitively in the 50s by the vocal group, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we think. Miniachi has to fall.
Yeah.
So pleasant.
Yeah.
And I must have heard it. I don't know what, but I know Van Morrison's version, and he gets himself into a thing. But I thought my father had told me incorrectly, like the postmaster general or something had written this song, but it was a political guy who wrote this one song. The lyric, way back at the turn of the century, I think I looked it up, and that always intrigued me how a non-musician understood. It was almost as if he was speaking to his daughter.
Yeah.
Or someone who was so.
He wrote the melody.
He wrote the melody. Where does that? So who wrote the lyric? Then is really old.
Carl Sigman wrote the lyric in 1951.
Oh, okay. So the lyric came later. All right.
Yes.
Got you. So the lyric always seemed like to me that it was a fatherly figure saying, I know you're, but hold on.
Right.
Wait. At the moment when you most cannot wait, you're gonna fall at the door or cut your wrist or you're gonna take action. This thing is saying, don't take action. Wait, and it will be beautiful. All you hope it will be. I'm sorry, I get so touched by the lyrics. So when we went to sing it, and it wasn't like I was having any broken heart thing or anything. Everything was okay, but I know how that feels. So I said it has to be very, very slow. I want every word that we're saying to be felt so slow that the listener goes, so we just end up playing very slow.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way
But
we're going to wring out the old version and make you surrender to what's happening here.
Yeah.
And for me, it was very moving.
and there's
It is
a
indeed.
song, one of the songs on the record. I can hear you sniffle. I can
That's
hear
what
you like,
One. It's that one at
yeah,
the end.
yeah. And I was like, this is real. This is
Yeah.
real. This is. That's why it's so much of a conversation. It's hearing you as you, and that comes through in this record
you know
from
what you
beginning to
remind
end.
me of, that happened on more than one song.
It did.
It's not sadness. It's just such deep emotion that I'm going to tell you the story that um, that yet many of the songs ended in me sobbing. I remember now.
Yeah.
It was a lot of work.
It was a lot of work, but I, I get asked about it now, and I say it's like working with like the greatest actor in the world. She manages to go to that place, and then be able to express it.
It is like acting.
Yeah,
It's like acting.
yeah.
Michael said really
Russ, what's
amazing
your
things about the record before you came on.
That what?
Michael said really amazing things about the record before you came on.
Oh,
yeah?
I'll hear
It's
it
truly
later.
it's a work of art. The Russ, what do you like most about producing?
Yes. Did you hear him? Oh yeah.
Yeah, I heard him.
Okay.
What a question. I love everything about it. Uh, working with her is it's different than anybody else. But it's a matter of Lenny used to say it. The first thing is you have to be a good editor, and you have to be a great listener. So, and that I think is what happened with us on this record. I just I know your I know what you do, and so it was my job to really to listen and to be there with you while you were doing it, and often to just stay out of the way, and then I suppose the only thing I can think about that maybe was we went down the road on a couple of songs that wasn't working, and because I was I'm the person who sits back and listens, and like and we gave them all like a really good shot, and then I'd go, this isn't working, let's go on to the next thing.
Yes.
Yeah, and we have enough trust with each other, so she'd finally
We hit the vein so well that on some days in that 1 week we were recording 3 songs a day.
absolutely.
It was amazing.
Yeah. So we cut 15 songs in 5 days. 10 of them are on the record. And then we had, the extra track.
Yeah. It never entered my mind.
It never entered my mind, which we both loved and we wanted to have on the record, but I guess, it just didn't fit. But we have 3 versions of it and all of them are really good.
Beautiful.
So, yeah.
I was looking for that track because I saw your description of it, but I couldn't find it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, well, we're putting one out. The Japanese always want to have a special track.
Bonus track.
So they get a special track, but then we'll have 2 others that will eventually unfold, and all 3 of them are really beautiful.
Yeah, really. And you did that. That was another experience that I was so thrilled with. Rickie, we started to do overdubs, and she'd go, "Oh, give me a track," and she'd go out and like put a part down, and then another one, and then another one, and then all of a sudden this choir appears that also comes from outer space. It's not like anybody else's approach to putting vocals, a vocal group on the thing. It's just from another planet, and then it would just happen, I don't know. The only other time I ever had an experience.
Well, A Miniature Has to Fall has a choir that starts to come in.
Yeah.
I do feel them, but I know I don't plan it, so I know once I go in to do it, they'll all be there.
Yeah, but they're on a couple of other songs. They come in. It's just so, man. I mean, the only other time I ever experienced anything like that was when I worked with Brian Wilson, and he had an idea for something, and he said, give me a track, and he's going along. And Milton Nascimento too. Those two, where they put something down and then it goes and it sounds just awful. And then this other part comes in and bang, there it is.
How could you not do great work with a person like this, listening and appreciating everything that you do? That's love.
Well,
that's about the best that we have.
Yeah.
Somebody there to hear it.
And she's so funny, she'd start doing something, and I can remember a couple of times I'd say, what if you'd say, look, just let me do this. and then I'd go, oh, right, okay. And so then she'd do it, and then I get to comment later.
Right.
What
is happening?
Stay out of her way.
Like the photographer.
Let me do my thing.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Let me do my thing.
Yeah.
So I think in the annals of recording, I'm sticking my neck out a little bit, but this is Rickie and Russ's Kind of Blue. This is the album that people are going to listen to for years and say, there's just something about the vibe of this album that I'm just going to put on every time I feel in that mood.
Yeah. Good.
What a compliment.
That's our job. Yay.
That's our job, yeah.
Thank you so much. You said everything I would like to hear about the record. Thank you.
Yeah, man.
Well, thank you for putting it all down on the record for all of us to enjoy. And,
we had fun.
Again,
I hope fun making this record.
Yes, we
I
did.
could tell.
We have a little list for a possible other one. We'll see what happens. Maybe we can do it a little bit different, but the same.
Yeah, it's not in your nature to do the same thing twice.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. Take care. Nice talking to you.